Welcome back on Guard Army. Today we are going to be jumping into the Shrouded Fables format with the deck that is the face of the new set, Pecharunt. Pecharunt is a Pokemon with 190 HP and the ability Controlling Chains, which allows us to switch one of our benched Dark-type Pokemon, except any Pecharunt EX, with our active Pokemon, and if we do, our new active Pokemon is now poisoned. We can't use more than one Controlling Chains ability each turn, so having multiple of them in play doesn't mean that we can just switch randomly between multiple different Dark types. That being said, a free switch is very good, especially when there are things that synergize with Poison that are coming out in this set. For example, there is the card Binding Mochi, which allows attacks of poisoned Pokemon to do an extra 40 damage to our opponent's active. This way, with Pecharunt's ability, we can poison one of our own Pokemon and then do an extra 40 with Binding Mochi. So, in the same vein as this, we also have the Okidogi that has 250 HP on a basic, which is insane, with the attack Crazy Chain. Going off the rails with a crazy chain. Anyway, this does 130 damage, plus if it's poisoned, it does 130 more. Plus, with Binding Mochi, we are doing an extra 40 damage, meaning this for 3 energy is swinging for 300 damage. It also has the attack Poison Muscle, which allows us to search our deck for up to 2 basic energy cards, attach them to this Pokemon, and then this Pokemon is poisoned. So that can facilitate this being able to attack super early. For example, if we are going second and we whiff a turn 1 actual knockout attack, we could always just Poison Muscle, accelerate to ourselves, and then be ready to swing for the next turn. Also, Pecharunt has an attack called Irritating Burst that does 60 damage for each prize card our opponent has taken. So if our opponent has taken 4 prize cards, that's 240 damage for 2 energy, or 5, 300 damage. This is very similar to Charizard EX's attack, however, it's not scaling as high as fast, but it's still a nice attack to have in a Darkbox style deck. Unfortunately, we aren't able to poison ourselves with this, so we can't actually Binding Mochi onto the Pecharunt, but we can Binding Mochi onto any of our other Dark-type attackers. In that same vein, we have Munkidori EX with the ability Skip a Beat. If this Pokemon is knocked out by damage from an attack from your opponent's Pokemon, if you have a Pecharunt EX in play, your opponent takes 1 fewer prize card. So while we have a Pecharunt in play, this 210 HP Rulebox Pokemon is now only worth 1 prize, which is insane. And the fact that it can just swing for 190 for 3 energy means that it's basically a 1 prize attacker with a lot more health than the average 1 prizer that also swings for 190. The downside of this is you can't use it during your next turn. However, since you have Pecharunt, you can swap with something else, go back up with this, and then swing again. So this downside isn't even really a downside. Then we have Fezandipiti EX. This is going to be the main way that we'll be drawing cards throughout the game. The ability Take Advantage allows us to, when one of our Pokemon is knocked out during our opponent's next turn, we may draw 3 cards on our turn. We can't use more than 1 Take Advantage ability each turn, so we only really want 1 of this in play at a time, but it's great to be able to just draw 3 cards at the start of your turn if your opponent took a knockout. And with Munkidori being a great attacker in the deck and our opponent only taking 1 prize off of it, that's a great way for us to be able to draw a couple of additional cards. This also makes it where even if we don't have a Fezandipiti in play, a single Nest Ball is an out to drawing 3 cards, which is super nice. It also has the attack Cruel Arrow, which does 100 damage to one of our opponent's Pokemon. This is not the most relevant attack, but it could be nice for chasing something that retreated to the bench that we half-hitted with something like Munkidori. Then we have Darkrai VSTAR. This is a 270 HP VSTAR Pokemon that evolves from Darkrai V. We don't really need to talk about the Darkrai V too much, it's not super relevant, other than maybe being able to put our opponents to sleep in a pinch. But the real important thing is Star Abyss and Dark Pulse. Dark Pulse lets us do 30 plus 30 more damage for each dark energy attached to all of our Pokemon, and with cards like Dark Patch and Janine, we can accelerate a lot of energy into play very quickly. Plus, with the Pecharunt and Binding Mochi, this can be doing an extra 40 damage as well, so you can creep up to some really high knockouts. But another very relevant part of this is our V-Star power will be Star Abyss. You can look at your discard pile, grab any 2 item cards you find there, and put them back into your hand. Which is absolutely insane, because say you use 2 Dark Patches early, you could get back double Dark Patch and do it again. That's 4 energy in play. Then, in addition to that, we can also get back additional Night Stretchers. This is a new card that allows us to grab either a Pokemon or a basic energy card from our discard pile into our hand. We can grab back Trekking Shoes for a little bit of extra dig. Or we could even reuse our Prime Catcher, which is our ace-spec of choice. This allows us to pull up one of our opponent's bench, swap with one of our own, and then we can use Pecharunt's ability to swap our Pokemon back into the active again. So I find Prime Catcher to be a very good card in an aggressive deck like this. We've got one more Peko because while this Pokemon has no energy attached, it has no retreat cost, and Energizer Wheel for 70 to move 2 Dark Energy to one of our bench Pokemon is not a bad attack at all. This is also going to be our way to actually hit Mimikyu if our opponent is trying to stall us out and block the rest of our attackers, but it's mainly here as a free retreat 1-prize pivot. We also have Radiant Greninja as our Radiant of choice because it's good consistency, and the more dark we're getting into our discard pile early on, the easier it'll be for us to accelerate with Dark Patch. So using concealed cards, discarding a dark from our hand and drawing 2, we'll be able to draw us a bunch of extra cards throughout the game. We also have Squawkabilly EX with the Squawk and Seize ability. This will allow us to get set up more consistently. As long as we see either a Nest Ball or an Ultra Ball at the beginning of our game, we will be able to establish a Squawkabilly EX and then discard our hand and draw 6 cards to be able to more easily establish our board. And then finally, for our Pokemon, we have Mew EX, which has the ability Restart, which allows us to draw until we have 3 cards in hand. This is great in either the early game if we're like playing down a ton of cards super fast and need to see a couple of extra pieces, or in the late game, it's very good when your opponent either unfair stamps you or Ionos you or Roxanne's you. You can be able to restart and refill your hand to potentially draw out of a dead hand. It also has free retreat, meaning it synergizes very well with Prime Catcher and also Pecharunt to some extent, being able to pivot between different things. I do like it most for being able to Prime Catcher into it and then retreat without necessarily needing to use Pecharunt, while also being a decent way to draw a couple of extra cards. Our main supporter is a new supporter, which unfortunately is not actually opening. So it is choose up to 2 of your Dark Pokemon. For each of those Pokemon, search your deck for a basic Dark Energy card and attach it to that Pokemon. Then shuffle your deck. If you attached any energy to your active Pokemon in this way, that Pokemon is now poisoned. This is another way that you can proc poison other than just Pecharunt. So if you don't have Pecharunt in play at the moment, you can always Janine's Secret Technique to be able to get that energy into play and also poison your Pokemon to get your extra effect, whether it be Binding Mochi or a combination of Binding Mochi and Okidogi. We also have 2 Boss's Orders because in addition to our Prime Catcher, we also like some supporter-based Gust as well. We've got Iono for a little bit of extra draw and also Disruption. And then we have 2 Arvens because they are going to be able to grab our Binding Mochi and can grab any one of our other items, whether it be Pokemon Search, Energy Acceleration, a little bit of extra draw, another way to find basic energy for your attachment for turn, or ways to manage your Pokemon or other resources. We then have 4 Nest Ball, 4 Ultra Ball. This finds our basics, this finds any of our other cards at the expense of 2 cards from our hand. Dark Patch allows us to accelerate basic energy from our discard pile to one of our bench Dark Pokemon. It doesn't really matter that it's benched because we can then just send it up with Pecharunt. We've got 4 Trekking Shoes for being able to dig through our deck as quickly as possible. 2 Earthen Vessel for being able to discard a card from our hand and search for 2 energy cards. This allows us to get our attachment for turn as well as to be able to concealed cards away the other one and draw 2 cards. We also have 2 Night Stretcher. This card is insane. Being able to put back either a basic energy card or a Pokemon into your hand gives you a ton of options throughout your game, as well as being able to retrieve it with the Darkrai VSTAR ASR ability. And then we have a Super Rod to be able to manage our energy and Pokemon a little bit better as well. Being able to put back our attackers throughout the game, or be able to reuse the Super Rod with Darkrai, or put back some of our energy if we just need to see more cards to be able to concealed cards and draw a couple of extra cards to try and dig into something else. Putting back energy can be just putting back ways to draw as well. We also, obviously, we have the Prime Catcher, that's our A-spec of choice, and then we have 3 of the Binding Mochi, which allows us to boost up our damage quite a bit, and then finally, we have 10 Dark Energy. I think this list is going to be a ton of fun, and it's going to be a super turbo Darkbox deck. I think that this might be, like, the best that we've seen, like, a turbo Dark deck in a while, and I think that it's going to be very good. A couple of considerations that I am currently mulling over are perhaps a town store or Pokestop or something. Right now I don't have any stadiums, and that might change in the future. I've been mulling it over between town store and Pokestop to some extent, but for now I'm just not including any of them and just focusing on pure consistency, even though they could theoretically help consistency. I'm just not 100% sure what specifically I want yet from the list. We could cut a Mew or the Morpeko, theoretically, for some stadium, whether it be Town Store or Pokestop, but I'm not 100% sure which to go with yet. This is sort of a preliminary list that's made to be super streamlined. Anyway, if you like this list, I hope you leave a like and subscribe if you haven't already. Leave a comment down below if there's any other decks from Shrouded Fable, or any cards specifically that you're excited for from the Shrouded Fable set. And I will catch you all later.